So let's look at conversions, converting. We want to convert. We want to convert from one data type into another data type. As I just indicated now, if I had a variable a equals 10, that is a string data type. That's a string. But what if I wanted to make this into an integer so that I can do calculations on it? That will mean I need to do casting. Casting means I want to change from one data type into another. So let's look at how that is done. In the first example, I've got the number 12.6. So this number 12.6 is a float. If I put an int in front of it, that means I'm casting. I'm changing the float into an integer. So in this case, the y will be converted into an integer because 12.6 is a float. Integer means a drop off the point. You don't want any points in an integer value. So making that into an integer will now convert it into 12, and that is now treated as a number, which means you can do calculations on this variable y. Similarly with z, you'll notice that this number 3 is a string. And if I put int in front of it, int and then brackets, this, which was a string, will now be converted into a number. So that's the number 3. Let's look at an example so you can understand this a lot better. So if I ask you what data type is A, immediately you'll tell me that is a string. If I look at the next statement, I'm taking A, which is a string, I'm casting it into an integer, and that is being stored into X, which means X is an integer. B is a string, and Y is an integer because it's being casted. So if I say print A plus B, if I say print A plus B, A is a string, B is a string from what I told you earlier on, it will simply put it together, 10, 20, because they are strings. But if I say print X plus Y, X was the same as A, but it was converted into a number, an integer. And Y was a string that was converted into a number. So now when I say 10 plus 20, that will give me an answer of 30. So Python understands the data types. A and B were strings. So if you set plus on those strings, it simply joined them together. But if you set plus on numbers, it did the calculation. So keep that in mind. In this instance, we've got A, which is a number, B is a number, A plus B, and that is going to display the value 30. No tricks to that. That's a simple calculation that's going to display 30. Now, what if we have, I hope you can see the statement because I've written over it. This statement is saying print, the sum is, so I will write it here. It's got the sum is, so that's a message, and it's printing the value of C, and we know that C is 30, right? So that's a number. So this is an integer, right? And this is a message, and that message is of type string. So you will notice I've got question marks here because this will result in an error. This is an error. Python, if you try this in Python and you had to say print and you have a string and then you have an integer, it's going to create a problem, because remember that the plus is trying to join a data type of type string, and it's trying to join a data type of integer. So you cannot join a string and an integer. That's going to result in an error. So how do we make this work then? Well, to get this to work, it's the same example here. This is my message, which is my string. And this is my variable, which is an integer. But as you can imagine, this is casting. Casting means I'm changing from one data type to another. So I'm changing from an integer, because that's what C is. I'm changing from an integer and I'm changing it into a string. So that makes it into a string. Now, can I join a string with a string? The answer is yes. So this will now output, it will output the sum is, and it's going to output C, and it's what's the value of C? 10 plus 20, 30, converted into a string, and it's going to display the sum is 30. So remember that when you are using a print statement and you have a message, because the message is a string, you have, and if you want to display numbers with it, you have to convert that into a string as well. We don't have a problem. We don't have a problem when we say print A plus B. This is an integer, right? A is an integer, B is an integer. So in this instance, there was no problems. I could do the calculation, integer plus integer, and it would not give me an error. But in this example, because I put the quotes, that made it a string, and when I try to join it with an integer, that results in an error. So we can do something like this, provided there's no message. But if you want a message with it, then a conversion is required.